I think a related thought is that I do feel like founders tend to focus too much on the number of customers they have and too much on growth broadly early on. And so folks think about, I think, scale of revenue prematurely, I might say. And I think what's much more important to focus on is the quality of revenue that you have, particularly in the early days. And one way I think of assessing your quality of revenue is to perform the following tests. Have someone who's, much more neutral speak to every one of your customers and ask them, what are you using this product for and what value does it create? And unless the answer across all your customers is exactly the same, you are not ready to scale. Too often, we as founders kind of kid ourselves into thinking that we've, achieved what we've always wanted to achieve, a global brand that's infinitely scalable, and we think that our revenue is purer than it actually is. But I think one of the secrets I believe to like truly scalable growth is consistency in the value that you're creating. And I think that's the key thing to solve for, particularly in the early days.
Yeah, you folks have always kind of had a sales-led approach to landing, customers. There isn't a self-serve motion. Tell us a little bit about that decision. I think still it's very much a sales-led company.
Yep.
What was kind of the early days of like putting that together, like hiring kind of the right team?
Yeah.
I kind of followed your journey from the early days as well. Actually had some friends from high school actually join your company as well, leading sales. So
amazing. Okay.
But yeah, curious to learn more about how you built that out, that function, the decision, the process behind that decision.
So I guess two questions there. So on the decision to be sales led versus product led in our growth, we started certainly I come from a background that's very, very product oriented. So my DNA is to be able to use an app and not talk to a human. And I was extremely averse to the idea of introducing any friction at all in that process. So from day one, Ada was extremely focused on seamless self-serve onboarding experiences. And we did that for our early set of target customers who were actually very small mom and pop Shopify stores. And what we learned from that experience is that we could make these companies successful. But then we started to sign up some bigger customers, and then we kind of looked at the difference between these bigger customers and these smaller customers, and we realized it's actually the same amount of effort to manage and make one of these customers successful, but we can have like 10 times the impact. Signing one of these big customers is the equivalent of signing 10 of these smaller ones. And that led us to be much more empathic about the experience of a bigger customer navigating our company and discovering our company. And there's whole debates around, of course, we could get into about PLG and like the future of PLG, which I do think is changing right now. And I think the foundation model companies are really a good example of how it's changing and how there's multiple lines of growth, multiple journeys and multiple customer segments. But to simplify it, our perspective was we're signing up bigger customers, we're focused on enterprise brands, and the way our enterprise target market buys is not through a self-serve experience. They want to meet with us. They want to get to know our team. They want a much more consultative approach, as do we. We want to learn much more about the state of this company, its strategy, its people, before we elect to lean in and decide that they're a company we want to go after. And so that's how it evolved. And to answer the second part of your question, how is hiring a consequence of that? I think a lot of founders I speak to often think that the secret to scaling sales is hiring salespeople. And I've come to learn that at least in my case, in my experience, is not actually the case. I've found that like scaling sales is much more a byproduct of figuring out how to scale yourself as a founder, who's the face of the company, who's doing all the sales in the early days. And if you focus on how do you augment your own productivity, you'll end up one day with a large sales force that's doing exactly what you need them to do. But you won't be solving for that on day one. And I'm not sure if that nuance makes a difference. Like the way that nuance manifests is your first hire is not a head of sales. Your first hire is probably a really sharp sales specialist who joins every call along with you and helps you go from managing 5 prospects to managing 10 prospects, to go from closing 1 deal a week to closing 3 deals a week. And that person learns the skill sets that are required to run your process, and hopefully they grow into a sales manager or a sales director or a sales leader, what have you.